Welcome to this week's podcast, Between the Lanes. And again, this week we've got another great guest with us, and we're also keeping that guest between the lanes. So, Todd, you want to say hi before I introduce our guest?
Of course, yeah. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you with us this week. Super honored to have. Well, I feel like I want you to introduce him, so I don't want to steal the your thunder of our guest. But I'm very glad that he's here. It's going to be.
It's only nice to greet our guest, though.
That's right. He's welcome for sure.
Yes. Well, our guest this week is Steve Riach. He is the head. He's a leader that I've known for a long time, and I'm proud, honored to be able to call my friend. He leads Eterne Films. It's a documentary film company. He's headed a project called One Heart, and we're going to talk a little bit about all that has developed. But he is a leader that lives his faith in everyday situations in the marketplace. And Steve, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And if you want to just give a brief introduction, more than what I did, about what you're involved in and who you are in a deeper way, please do that for our guests.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's great to be with both of you, and a little intimidated between the lanes, but looking forward to our time. Just 30 plus years in the movie industry, movies and documentaries and TV and creating content, and then 25 years working with underserved youth in different parts of the country and working to help them have better futures, really. Yeah,
and it's so amazing. I've had a chance to peer into the part of your life that is working with underprivileged youth and the leadership that has been a part of that. And while there's many areas I want to probe about you and your leadership, let's go there first.
Sure.
Would you just briefly describe One Heart and what One Heart is and sort of how it's developed and then what's been spawned off of that?
Sure. So One Heart is a 501c3 nonprofit, national nonprofit that works to equip youth that are in the juvenile justice system or youth that are considered to be high risk with the skills and tools and healthy relationships they need to navigate life successfully and get a second chance, or in some cases, a first chance.
Okay, so I know a little bit of the behind the scenes for this. So you one of your children was at a Christian school. Mm-hmm. The school played the juvenile detention facility in football.
Right. And
as a documentary film guy, you thought, well, I'm going to record this. It's kind of interesting. And take it from there. Well, yeah. Take what developed.
Yeah, so I had a sense that something very special was going to happen that night. And so we brought a camera out and recorded it. And it ended up that something very, very special did happen that night. And really had a sense, I had been looking for a story to tell as a feature film, a dramatic narrative feature film, and had a bunch of scripts come across my desk, and they weren't very good, frankly. And I'm at the game that night and watched this event unfold, and I felt like I'd been given a gift that night, that God gave me a gift, and here's the story that I have for you to tell. So we ended up developing that story, and the fascinating thing about how God works is we had already spent 15 years working with kids in public schools who are in urban areas, underserved, at-risk youth, had impacted maybe 750,000 kids over time in these schools in about half the states in the country, but had never really thought about kids in prison. Just didn't think about it. And at the same time, this game happened, and we decided to turn it into a motion picture. We started on the nonprofit side having requests from leaders in juvenile justice who had heard about what we were doing in the public school system and said, hey, can you come customize something for us with the kids we serve? We need something like what you're doing for our kids. And as God so often does, those two worlds just collided. And rather than just telling the story in a motion picture, it became an opportunity to make a movie that would not only hopefully be one of those iconic inspirational films, but also use it as a mechanism to create awareness in the public for what these kids are like and what their needs are, and hopefully create empathy, and also hopefully drive a whole bunch of people into being part of the solution.
Yeah. So I've watched you lead in this capacity. So as a filmmaker, and when this film began to develop, you needed to raise funds to produce the film and build the infrastructure that is involved in film leading. And there was a lot of challenges, in leadership challenges in that dynamic.
Yeah, there really are. I mean, making a movie that you're going to see, that you see in theaters around the country, right? Making a bad movie is easy to do. There's a lot of bad movies out there. It's just reality. Making a really good movie is very difficult, and everything has to come together. The story has to be great. The script has to be great. The cast has to be great. The crew has to be great. Execution, I mean, it's very difficult to do, which is why when you ask people, what's your favorite movie you've ever seen? And most people repeat 3 or 4 or 5 of the same films. It's hard, and leading that is difficult because you're dealing with people, and they're dealing with you, they're dealing with me. So it's challenging, and we did not have a cast or a crew that all came right directly from church to the set. So we were very sensitive to the fact that we wanted to not only do what we did with excellence and tell a great story and tell it well, and be a great steward with the resources that we were given. We wanted our investors to be thrilled with the end result, and we want them to be blessed. So we want commercial success, of course. But at the same time, we didn't want to sacrifice the people on the set either. We wanted them to see that we did things differently. We wanted to see that we didn't scream at them or yell at them. We treated them like human beings, that everyone was equal on the set, whether they were the lead actor or a grip, that they were all equal. And there's a lot of leadership challenges that come with that, a lot of money that has to be raised, a lot of people that you have to be accountable for. And it's kind of the aspect of, if any man builds a house, he has to count the cost, right?
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah. Well, challenges presented themselves along the way. And I think one of the challenges of any leader is to understand need and timing. And how did you navigate that important piece of, I got to have the right time to release the movie. I got to have the right people in the room to tell the story, to raise the funds, and all of that. Where do you want to go there?
Sure. So, need and timing. It's always about what I need, and why isn't it happening in the timing I want
my
it?
timing,
right?
yeah.
I think, perhaps the greatest test of leadership, and we see it all throughout Scripture, is releasing our leadership into the hands of God, and trusting Him with it, and trusting Him with timing, trusting Him with really everything, right? And I think oftentimes we think we do, but I think there are times where He orchestrates circumstances to get us to a place where we know that we do rather than think we do, because it's one thing for me to let go of 3/4 of a rope. It's another thing for me to let go of all of it. And there definitely were experiences during the process where trust is tested, for sure. And at the end of it, I think it's, we have a decision as leaders that we can do it 75% His way and 25% our way, or we can do it 100% His way.
That's incredible.
And doing it 100% His way is always better. It's most of the time later.
Yes. Yes.
But it's always better.
I think you and I had several coffees together trying to figure out where is the timing, God's timing versus my timing in the mix of this. So,
can I just add something to
please.
that? Because I think it's so profound as a leader. You've been through this, and you have as well, Todd. And the understanding of timing is something that even when we think we know, or we've had multiple experiences and we think we've learned from those, we still don't know. And I often think about, and I think we've had this conversation before, but I often think about Mary and Martha when they called for Jesus when their brother was sick. And they had seen him heal before. They knew he was going to come and heal their brother. And then, they started looking at their watches after a while and thinking,
Where's Jesus?
he should have been here.
Yeah.
And then all the questions, came to their mind. We know because of their response when he got there, the questions came to their mind, like, what's taking him so long? If he really cared about us, he would have been here. And it's all those kinds of things that go through our mind when we're waiting for God to move and it's not happening the way we want or in the timing we want. And both of them, when Jesus does arrive and they come out to the grave to greet him or see him, even the spiritual one, Mary, but they both say, if only you'd been here. They didn't say, you're here now, everything's okay.
Yeah.
If only you'd been here. And I think, we do the same thing, but in that instance, Jesus knew that they knew that he could heal sickness, but he also knew that they didn't know that he had power over death.
Yeah.
And they needed to know that, and so did we,
Yeah.
right? And so often I think our leadership is we have that same kind of experience where we know he's going to show up in this way or that way, but we haven't yet experienced or don't fully know he's going to show up that way. And he has to show us and prove to us that he will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can I ask, just back up a second, because I want to get a fuller picture of you. So here you are as a storyteller, and you're in an industry that traditionally has not favored faith-based storytellers. How did you get into it? What was your motivation, and was faith always part of it for you from the beginning, or how did that journey sort of like
question.
intersect?
Yeah. So I really felt early on, Todd, that what God put in my heart was his first declaration over his followers during the Sermon on the Mount, after the Beatitudes, which we all know well. But his first declaration was, you are the salt of the earth and you are the light of the world. It wasn't an invitation. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a speculation. It was a declaration. You are. And I personally feel like maybe the church as a whole has not done a really good job of that over my lifetime. It's been more comfortable and easier to be kind of inside our own subculture, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I just felt driven that part of what my purpose was to be out in the world, to be salt and light. And so I always wanted to tell stories, I think, that would be amenable to the mainstream of culture and could be the mainstream of culture people could engage with. And I also, I know that there are a lot of people that will get mad at me for saying this, so I'm apologizing in advance out there. I think in our culture, to a great deal, here in the United States in particular, by and large, people who don't understand faith or don't have a Christian faith really are tired of hearing the gospel. To a degree,
Yeah.
but I think they're desperate to see a demonstration of it.
Wow.
And so I think when we are the salt of the earth and the light of the world, we have a chance, an opportunity to demonstrate the gospel, not just in storytelling, but how we act on the set, how we treat people, how we do our business, all of that.
It's almost like when the term post-Christian, in a post-Christian culture, to me, what that really means is the language, the talking about it has been saturated. Now it's how do you walk it out and how do you live it, and that's usually where a culture declines because it can't do it. They don't do it. All right, I have
Okay. So I do?
Well, hang on, but I just got to ask one thing because
Okay.
because I want to kind of lift it like really lighthearted for just a second.
Sure.
What's the favorite story that you've told, of all of your body of work? And outside of that, you mentioned like the top movies or whatever. What's your top? You're a filmmaker, so like in you, what would you recommend to us as like sort of the best storytelling that's out there?
So movies are like restaurants, and movie audiences are like people that go eat at restaurants.
Yes.
Two people can be at the same restaurant, and one loves the meal and it tells everybody about it, and the other person can't stand it and will never go back.
Yeah.
But having said that, one of the films that I still love after all these years is Chariots of Fire. I think it's a great story. It's so well told. And it has endured time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that film. Favorite stories I get to tell? Gosh, there's a lot, but I'll tell you one that is a throwback. There was a guy that played basketball back in the 1960s and 70s by the name of Pete Maravich.
Pistol Pete.
So a lot of people, if they're your age or older, will know that name.
Yep.
People that are younger than you may not,
Yep.
but he revolutionized the game of basketball, was an amazing human being after he came to faith. And getting to tell his story in a kind of a short film was a true, incredible experience. We played horse against each other. We played one-on-one. He taught me all the tricks. I mean, it was just
That's cool.
it was a thrill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are most of your stories that you tell connected to some kind of sport? Or are they, is the athletic side of thing an important part of your storytelling?
It seems to be a place where I've been planted and developed relationships, so it makes sense. But like we're finishing a documentary right now on Title IX. This is not going to be light. Sorry,
Okay.
this takes us back into heavy.
It's okay. That's all right.
But Title IX and sexual assault on college campuses, and how Title IX as a statute has failed us in terms of how those cases are adjudicated. So it's a little heavier, and it's non-sports related. When you say Title IX, most people think, well, that's another sports film, but it's not.
Yeah.
But
Or like when I think of Title IX, I think of the point was fairness and equity among sports between men and women. Maybe without giving away, or maybe you want to give away what the film's going to be about, but where do you go in that story?
yeah, really. So the statute, I guess, because there was no other better way to do it at the time, but because it was related to gender equity on college campuses, it became kind of the guideline for how sexual assault campuses were going to be dealt with on campuses, and the result has not been good. The result has been too many people are being assaulted and too many people are being falsely accused.
Wow.
So basically the film premises that two things can be true at the same time. There can be too many people being assaulted and too many people being falsely accused, and we need to find a solution that helps both.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like a very
Sorry for the
interesting-
heaviness.
Yeah, no. When is that one coming out?
Next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm jumping back in sort of the timeline of events here. So you start this this story about a Christian school who's playing a juvenile detention center, and the coach invites the parents of the school, Christian school, to root for the other team.
Correct.
Because their boys aren't going to have anybody in the stands if these parents. So that begins to develop the storyline that you produce in the movie. Well, but in the middle of that, or at least this is my take. You can correct me if I'm not wrong. If I'm not right, as you begin delving into and producing the movie part of this, you find out there's a need that is present in the juvenile system, and that begins to drive a burden that you carried. So take us from there. What happened after the movie's not finished filming yet, but you're already thinking, how do I help these juveniles coming out of detention?
Yeah, it's good, Tom. I mean, what happened that night was so special because for the first time in those kids' lives, they felt like there was somebody that they didn't know that actually cared about them. And it produced hope, and hope is what we all need, right? It's Scripture's very clear about the power of hope. Hope does not disappoint. So as we're developing that to get the screenplay written, we went and did interviews with the kids who participated in the game from the maximum security facility, and heard their stories and heard them talking about very pointedly that this was the greatest night of their entire life. We had one young man who said to me, he said, "Hey, mister, you know those people, they had a sign with my name on it. And the fans they were calling me by name." I said, "I know, I was there. Wasn't that cool?" And he goes, No, you don't understand. That's the first time in my life I've ever heard my name used in a positive way."
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So you think about the power of people just trying to be fans for these kids and what it did for them. One other young man said, "If I'm fortunate enough to have children and grandchildren, one day I'm going to have my grandchild on my lap. I'm going to tell the story about the greatest night of my life." So you just heard all these very powerful stories. So then I began asking them more questions about their experience. And, what do you wish you had? What do you need when you come out of here? And as we learned more, myself and others learned more, that's where we took what we had been doing for a number of years in public schools on the nonprofit side and determined, man, we've got to go to these kids. There's nothing for them. We got to, and as we had just been starting to have requests from juvenile justice leaders about could we come in and create something for their
Justice reform.
for their kids.
Yeah.
So it was all God's timing, and it all worked together, and that's when, as happens often for me at least, I don't know if it's this way for you guys, but I'm kind of just minding my own business, trying to just be faithful for what's in front of me, and God kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "Yes." And he basically said, "I want you to go build an ark, I want you to build this thing called the One Heart Project." And I said, "Are you sure?" Are you sure?
Do you have other options?
Yeah. Do you have somebody
Yeah,
else?
somebody else. But what's great is there have been so many incredible people, and you guys both have helped. So you're included in this. But there've been so many amazing people who've said, "I want to pick up a hammer and a couple of nails too, and just build alongside you." And now we've got this initiative that's operating in multiple states. Thousands of kids are having their lives changed. And I think that for me, the most exciting thing that we're seeing in that is, well, that's probably threefold, but the individual lives are being transformed. They'll never be the same. But these kids that we've been working with are now, we've been working with for 8-10 years. They're now 27, 28, 30 years old. They're having children. And so I had an incredible experience where that will kind of exemplify the story that I'm about to, or the point that I'm trying to tell you is that we had a retaining wall about to come down in our backyard. So I called the company that put our retaining wall up, and he said, "I'm going to send a couple of guys out to fix it tomorrow." Well, these guys drive up my driveway the next morning. 2 young men go in my backyard. I meet them in the backyard. "Hey, you guys need anything? You need some water?" "No, sir, we're good." I said, "Well, come back out in 20 minutes or so and just see if you need anything." I turn to go back in the house, and one of them says, "Hey, I know you. One Heart." So I turn around and look at this young man, and I recognize him. His name's Juan Aguilar, and he was in that first football game.
Wow.
He was one of the first young men that we helped, and helped him get a job, and he got on track and got One Heart around him and programming and people loved on him, and his life changed. I said, "Juan, what are you doing in my backyard?" He said, "Well, I came to fix your wall." And I said, No. I mean, what's happened in your life? He said, "Well, I've been working for this company for the last 4 years. Got a little side business. Got married 4 years ago. I've got a 3-year-old daughter. Steve, the reason why I went to prison was I never knew my dad. My daughter will never know that experience. I put her to bed every night. I pray for her every night. I read her a book every night. She'll always know her dad loves her and is there for her. She'll never have the experience I did. Life is hard, but it's good. Now, I look at the other young man next to him because I'm tearing up and I'm thinking, what's this guy thinking about this whole story? Juan sees my eyes go to the young man next to him and he says, "This is my brother, Christopher." Oh. I said, "Your brother? I didn't know you had a brother." Christopher said, "Yeah, when we were growing up, Juan and I were all we had was each other. But I went to prison too, and we were separated for 9 years. Wow. But when I got out of prison, Juan took everything that One Heart did for him, and he instilled that into me. I've been married for 4 years too. I've got a 3-year-old daughter too. I put her to bed every night. I pray for her every night. I read her a book every night. She'll never have the experience that I had. She'll always know her dad is there for her and loves her."
Oh my gosh.
So now I'm like crying in my backyard, but God showed me immediately in an instant, it's not only life transformation, but it's breaking the cycle for the next generation.
Yeah.
And so when we think about what happens with this multiplication effect with kids whose lives are being transformed now, and now they're there for their children, and they have been given the tools and been coached how to raise their children. Yeah. We think about what happens with the juvenile prison population and how that decreases in a generation or two, and how it changes the nuclear family in a generation or two.
Yeah.
We're talking about things that will far, be way beyond my lifetime, but the generational impact that can occur, I think, is really profound. So all those people coming alongside with hammers and nails, that's what they're building.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think I want to just let this sink in just a minute, because it could be lost in the things that are being said. What started as a one-night filming of a football game, and you began out of that to activate your faith, and it produced a nonprofit ministry that it produced a juvenile system reform, and it's put you in front of government leaders, state and federal. It's put you in front of business leaders to gain the funding, not only for the film, but for the One Heart Project. And the point that I just want to make is, when you say yes to God, you just don't know what that yes will mean. I mean, I can just
generational it might be.
Yeah, what the outcome might be, and its impact. And I just can't imagine that night of the football game when you packed up your camera and headed to the sidelines, that if you sort of would have had the full measure of, okay, this is what it's going to cost you, Steve, because I know you've been all in. I know you've been all in, not only in your work and your business. It's financial, it's organizational, it's everything. I think if you might have known that night what was involved, you'd have left your camera at home, or at least thought about it.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you're exactly right when you say it's just saying yes. Yeah. And it doesn't make me important or heroic or whatever. I think when we're given the opportunity, every time we receive information, every time there's information that's disseminated to us, it demands a response. Now, that response can be no or not yet, but God doesn't allow us to get information without a response. Yeah. It demands a response. Yeah. So for me, it was yes, but the hero in the story is God, because what God said was, when he got my attention, what he was saying was, it was almost like he put his finger on a dot on a map. And the dot represented this population of kids. And basically what I saw in my mind's eye was him putting a finger on a dot on the map, and the dot represented the population. He said, "I love these kids. Are you willing to do something about it?" Now, had he told me what something meant, you're right, I probably would have just, I think you came to the wrong place. But
I'm busy.
But the great news for us is that when we say yes, even though it's challenging and difficult, and at times you definitely want to quit, there's no question, he provides grace and strength and people and encouragement and all of that that's needed, because it's more important for him that his purpose is accomplished than it is for us, you know? It's so important to him because he so loves those kids. And so we just get to be a part of it.
Yeah.
We just get to go along and be part of it and get to see what he does. And, you know, I was in Kansas last week where we did an appreciation dinner for our volunteers up there and our partners, and then we celebrated some kids. And Tom, after the event was over, one of the young men who we celebrated, a kid from the system, walked over to myself and a person I was standing next to and had a camera around his neck, and he said, "Can I take a picture of the two of you?" And I said, "Sure, of course." Well, he didn't really want to take a picture of us. He wanted to know that somebody saw him. And so it was an opportunity for us to I said to him, "Hey, you got an award. I'm so proud of you tonight." And his face just lit up. And then his brother came running over next to him. And his brother had gotten an award that night too. And his brother just kind of stood there like this. And I said, "Hey, you got awards tonight too. I'm so proud of you." And he just lit up. I mean,
Yeah.
they just want to know somebody sees them,
Yeah.
you know, which is what we all have. We all just want to know that we're seen.
Yeah.
And we get to be a part of that. We get to be a part of telling those kids that we see them. They're just as Chris Hogan, the coach of the football team who initiated that game, when he wrote the email to the people in the community to come out and support and be the fans to cheer for them and all that, he said, "I want you to demonstrate to these kids that they are just as important as anybody else on the face of the earth." That's what it is. You know, we get the chance to do that.
Yeah.
So incredible.
You know, I was thinking about the journey of it for you, and the saying yes. Of course, not knowing what ultimately God's going to play out in it, and I think about, you know, how God makes it clear to us that my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And if we can get our head around that reality and go, I don't know where God may take this, I don't know what all God has in store, because I have no idea how to comprehend what God might be thinking in this, but he's simply asking me to do it. So you talked about saying yes, and I know you on sort of a different lane of your life that you occupy is one of being strongly prophetically gifted. The Lord's gifted you with a prophetic anointing and ability, and I've seen you operate in that way. And talk about that dynamic of playing into your leadership style, or how you even see projects, or, you know, the aspect of hearing from the Lord, but then that being not just a hearing, but it activates you to doing, but it also activates you prophetically. How does that affect your leadership?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's for me, my experience has been there's an amazing side of that that's wonderful and great, and then there's a really difficult side of that. And I think I think with a prophetic bent, you know, you tend to see things and understand them and kind of know them, quote unquote, quickly. You don't necessarily know how they're all going to unfold and what the timing is, like we talked about before, but you have this great sense of, okay, this is what's going to happen and this is what we need to do. And that's great because it gives you vision and you know where you're headed and all of that. But the challenge is, you know, not everybody's bent similarly. And so I think the tension exists where you know that, and other people may not be ready to go along. And sometimes in your zeal to follow that prophetic push, you know, just being very blunt, I mean, you can hurt people. And you don't want to do that, but the expectation sometimes is that everybody's going to see it the same way, and they don't necessarily. And then you've got this whole dynamic where if you've been given the vision to steward, you know, you have to kind of figure out, okay, God, what does that mean, right? Because particularly in the faith-based film industry, like you talked about earlier, Tom, I mean, I think it's very common and easy to fall into this trap of, okay, God's given me this vision to make this movie, and so that means I need to write it, produce it, and direct it. Because I've got to steward the vision.
Yeah.
But I may not be a good director. And so am I going to sacrifice the totality of the vision and the project because I feel like I've got to own it all?
Yeah. Control.
And I think that's one of the mistakes that maybe we have made as faith-based filmmakers over time. If you felt called that you had to have a open heart surgery, you may not want to do the surgery yourself, right? You want to find the best person to actually give you the medical attention that you need. And I think sometimes we need to make sure that we're equipping with the very best people to do the task that God's called us to, and maybe understand that we don't have to own it all.
Yeah.
And that even as the person who stewards it and oversees it, you can still trust other people to carry the vision out, right? Write the vision down so that others may run with it.
Yeah.
So I think those are important things to learn when particularly when you're oriented as a visionary or you're oriented as a prophetic visionary. You just have to be careful. And there's times too, I think, where because you feel like you've been given the vision that everybody else might be a hired gun, so to speak, and you're the only one who's got all the skin in the game.
Yeah.
And you have to find ways to be able to work with those people. It's very, very challenging, right? Because they still want to do a good product. They still want to see something happen, but they're not going to care about it as much as you do. It's just not going to, and you can't expect them to.
Yeah.
So I've kind of gone around and around your question, but I think you just have to really be very careful, because at the end of the day, if we get something done and it's fulfilled the prophetic vision, but we've hurt a bunch of people, then what have we really gained?
Yeah.
So,
and that's encouraging to hear you say that, because I think a lot of leaders don't think of it that way. They think, I've got a prophetic vision and thus a word from the Lord. I got to make it happen. And if you're with me on this, we're going to drive to accomplish the vision God gave. And I was thinking about it when you were even talking earlier about so I'll use, if prophecy is a gift of the Spirit, well, what are some of the fruits of the Spirit?
Yeah.
Well, two that stick out, and even going back to thinking about God's timing, are patience and self-control. And how often when we may have a prophetic vision, but God's timing isn't quite there yet, or he doesn't have the people around you that you can empower properly and trust to steward the vision as well. And we lack self-control, or we lack patience, then we may force something to happen that God was like, that wasn't quite my timing yet.
Yeah. And I think most of us have experienced that, and you end up in a situation that you wish you weren't in.
Yeah.
Joshua did a great job of leading the children of Israel into the promised land when he was given the mantle to do that. And really, when you read his life, you think about, man, this guy was almost perfect, but he made one mistake, right? There was one people that came to him in disguise, and instead of asking God, are we supposed to have a relationship with them, he immediately covenanted with them.
Yeah.
And then the responsibility was, we had made a covenant to take care of them, right? So he had to. But I think it's when we're wanting the vision to come about, it's so easy to make those kind of mistakes too, where we'll jump into something because it's a way that we see it can be accomplished.
Yep.
And so the tension there is you always have to be continually laying it before God. And one of the things that I felt like I was shown when we were at the beginning of the movie process was, I felt like God showed me that you're going to have many people that are going to come to you that want to participate in this. And I'm going to show you the difference between who you're to say yes to and who you're to say no to. And he gave me this picture of people with hands like this, open. And he said, some people are going to come to you like this, and some people are going to come to you like this. And he said, I want you to work with the people like this. I don't want you to work with the people like this. And I wish I could tell you that we scored 100 on that test. But we're human.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just make mistakes.
Okay.
We gotta stay in that place where we're consistently seeking and asking for wisdom and not taking it in our own hands.
Yeah.
Okay, so I maybe going to put you on the spot here a minute, but I think there could be somebody watching this podcast and they're not familiar with the term prophetic vision or visionary. And how would you describe that work? What you're talking about in your leadership, how would you describe it in terms that are maybe not, they're consistent biblically, but they're not a biblical term?
The guy writing the book on prophecy is going to ask me to give that answer, huh?
Touche. That's
So I think to simplify it, vision, I think most of us understand what vision is. You have vision for a project, and you kind of see the big picture of where it's going. You may not see all the details, but you see the big picture of what's supposed to happen. Prophetic vision, I think, is similar, but it's a little different. And in fact, Proverbs says, when it says without vision, people perish or are unrestrained, the word there, the actual word for vision is prophetic vision. Without prophetic vision, my people are unrestrained. And I think what the impression of that scripture is that we not only need to see big picture, but we need to see what God's big picture is. What's headed in the future? Where are we going? What is his plan for this? And if we can ascertain as best as we can in our humanness to understand the prophetic vision for something, then we're on the right track. And then, you start following those breadcrumbs, but you have to continually be letting it go and releasing it to God. But I think that's what I see prophetic vision being, as simplistically as being able to understand God's plan for where something is going in the future and what the purpose and design of it is. And if we can understand that, and then there's all kinds of other aspects about, for me and my personal experience, is seeing what that movie was supposed to do long term, seeing what the One Heart Project was supposed to be. What are the elements that it's supposed to have in it to be able to equip those kids with every skill and tool?
Yeah.
How do we see that from the beginning? And if we can see it from the beginning, then the people who are much better at building structure and execution and operational aspects, like you're so gifted with, can help build and shape that into so it will get there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You know the destination, but you have to build the railroad and the car to get there, right?
Yeah. And it's that leadership gift that is able to look at something that's being built and say, no, not that, but this. That's a prophetic sort of vision when you have the clarity to be able to speak that way in your leadership.
Yeah. And Todd, one thing you said too, I think, is oftentimes we feel like we're going here, this is where we're going, and kind of, these are my words, not yours, but everybody's got to get on board. And sometimes I think there's more nuance than that, right? Sometimes we think this is God's plan and I've got to pursue it, and if you're not with me, you're against me or whatever. I just think after experiencing this for a number of years, I think it's just more nuanced. I think there are ways, the two things that will last forever are God's word and people, right?
Yeah.
When we're in eternity, other than somebody coming up and saying, "Hey, I watched that movie you made, One Heart," nobody else is going to care.
Okay, so
But how we treat people in the process, and like if I think about what I wish I would have done differently, I wish I would have been, now kind of looking back at what I know now, I wish I would have been less dogmatic about everybody's got to be on board with the vision and we've got to go there, and I'd been a little more sensitive to everybody not necessarily understanding all of that with a few of the people. I think for the most part, I'm so pleased with the relationships and all that, but I think there are a couple of opportunities I had that I could have done things a little differently. So that's a learning experience.
And maybe that's sort of true of every leader as they reflect back. Oh, I could have done that a little better. I want to just ask Steve. So if somebody wants to know more about the juvenile reform piece of this, would it be oneheart.com?
Yes, sir.
If they'll go to oneheart.com, they'll be
Yeah.
able to get information. And what about information on the movie? I know it's done. I know it's in the can,
Yep.
and it's waiting for the appropriate release date. Would they be able to get information on the movie from a website as well?
Yeah, they actually can go to oneheart.com or oneheartmovie.com, and they can get information that'll be released about the movie when we have the release date.
Yep.
But yeah, it'll be released to theaters sometime in 2024 in the fall. And we just did a test screening last week with an audience in South Texas, and it was really fun. I mean, you hope as a filmmaker that you create something that will engage the audience and they'll feel good about. And at the end of the movie, there was, the entire theater, people were clapping and cheering. And so
That's awesome.
you just, again, it's hard, and it's hard to make something like that resonates, and you just hope it does, and you trust and you walk it through. But I think we've got something that does. So we're excited.
Well, Steve, thank you for being with us today. And Todd, why don't you pray us out today?
I will. I want to ask one more thing, just kind of in summary, and get your final thought on this. So I love hearing your perspective about how you lead people and the treatment of people. So we've talked about the prophetic vision and operating in that. We've talked about your view of leading people through empowerment and how you need to empower people around you to accomplish a vision, and then the way you treat people. Is there any other sort of, what's your top level leadership value? What in your value system? I know it's like we're ending, but I just wanted to ask this one last question, because you strike me as a kind of leader that many people would like to follow. So what's your top level? What's a value system for Steve Riach?
I think it's crucial that we value our people, the people that work around us, and then we speak value into them as consistently as possible, and we cast vision that is not unattainable for them, right? Everybody wants to know that they have value, and it's so important. I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking the thing we're doing is what's so important. I'm doing this for God, and it's a kingdom thing. It's so important. Yeah. And Jesus is walking. He's about to enter Jericho. He's walking along the road. The disciples are around him. We've got to go. We've got to get to where we've got to get to. We've got to get to the rest of the mission. The crowd is crushing around him. People are wanting to, tug on him. And he hears this voice. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And he stops. And he stops for the blind man on the side of the road, gets down into got down into his face where the blind man couldn't see him, but got down on his level and said, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Yeah.
In his mission, the thing that just blows me away about Jesus, if I can think about it in human terms, right, is that he knew exactly what his mission was. He knew exactly what he had to finish. He knew what the finish was going to be. He knew that it was imperative that he finish the mission. He had to finish the mission. But in his process of going down the track, if you will, to get to the finish line, he never ignored the people who called on his name.
Yeah.
He didn't ignore the woman with the issue of blood. He didn't ignore the man under authority who came to him. He didn't ignore the blind man on the side of the road. He didn't ignore the woman at the well. He never ignored them for the sake of the mission, if you will, for the sake of the finish line.
Yep.
It was all part of his mission, right? And so if we can remember, it's not the project, it's not the mission, it's not the finish line of what we've set our hands to that is most important. It's the people that are most important.
Yeah.
And we lose sight of that sometimes. And so if we can focus on loving our people, making sure they know that they're valued, and then helping cast vision that is attainable for them, that they see where they can get to.
Yeah.
I'm still learning that, Todd. I'm still learning it. And thankfully, I'm still growing in it. But I think those are the most important things that we will ever do.
So true. And so well said, to focus on Jesus. That's exactly how Jesus did it. He didn't miss the person for the mission. So, Steve, thank you for taking your time to be with us. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for your passion to help those in need, and telling beautiful stories along the way. So, thank you. I'm gonna pray us out. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
God, we thank you for this time today, Lord. I thank you for people tuning in today, Lord, who maybe need encouragement and to be inspired to step outside of themselves, to let your word lead them into something new, and that might have a generational impact. We bless Steve. We bless the One Heart ministry and the movie and all the other stories that have been part of what Steve tells. God, thank you for how you've equipped him. We bless him. And Lord, just pray that as we go today, Lord, we'd be inspired to take the next step with you in faith, not knowing where it could lead, but how it might have a generational impact. We ask that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
We'll see y'all next time.